Who is the proper team or teams to be fading in the 2024-2025 FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge? Which players that are off the beaten path need to be targeted by you in order to win that $500K? And what does it feel like to be an FFPC millionaire? We are going to ask that question of Pete Tarsiewicz, the 2024 FFPC main event grand prize champion, who will join us in just a few minutes. We had him on a couple of months ago, and he makes his return, a fantasy football millionaire. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you so much, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Mr. Ferrell Elliott. Before we get the show underway today, I do want to remind you that if you have not joined the world famous FFPC Playoff Challenge yet, not only are we going to give you 60 minutes of content for you to chew on in order for you to figure out who you want to target, who you want to put on your rosters in that, but you can register now and do it before it's too late. There's two great contests here with the same awesome format. No draft, no salary cap. Just choose the 12 players that you want and watch them ride throughout the playoffs. Win $500,000, win $100,000, $200 or $35 to enter. Again, the only slant, only one player per NFL team. That means if you want Josh Allen, you can't have James Cook. If you want Lamar Jackson, you can't have Mark Andrews. You got to pick which player per team that you want. As it stands right now, I just checked it before we came on air tonight. We're looking at about 85% full for the $100,000 challenge, and then you're looking at almost, or I should say, just over 70% full for the $500,000. Now, the lineups will lock at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow at kickoff of that Chargers-Texans game. They're going to go fast. They're going to go fast overnight. They're going to go fast in the morning, and they're going to go super fast in the afternoon. You can tinker with your lineups all the way up till 4:30, but make sure you get your spots squared away so you're not left out in the cold. Fantasy football is still not over. We got a month plus of fun postseason football. Why not make it a little bit more interesting and play fantasy football with the FFPC at myffpc.com and join the world famous FFPC Playoff Challenge. If you want to connect with us on X, you can do so at HSFF. I'm at Eric Balkman. Check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Facebook.com/HSFF. You can reach us there as well. highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com is the email address. If you have any questions for us, for Ferrell, for Pete, now's the time to send them in. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, X posts, and emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. I want to thank our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and of course our producer and mutual friend Rob. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to talk about the Eagles receivers that are a little bit banged up. How should you be treating them as leverage plays in the playoff challenge? We'll talk about some offseason stuff, some injuries to Deshaun Watson and Michael Pittman. How does this affect you when you start drafting in the FFPC in probably just a couple of weeks here? And then, of course, Pete Tarsiewicz will welcome him on to tell us about his Week 17 sweat, the toughest lineup decision he was facing, and obviously what he's going to do with that $1 million he just won in the FFPC main event. Before we bring him on, I want to bring on the co-host with the most, the pride of Louisville, Kentucky, a guy fresh off of Vegas and comes home to 17 inches of snow in Kentucky. It is Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, how's it going tonight, man?
Oh, Balky, thank you for that introduction. You know, my end of the year and beginning of the year podcast ambitions with you have been truncated first by the flu and then by poor connectivity from a hotel room where I had outsourced that those computer assistants to humans much more adept at that than I did, and the result was failure. So it is wonderful to be back with you, and I have missed you. And thanks for everyone for your New Year's greeting here in the chat room. And it's amazing we've got such a great group tonight, considering that there is some football of interest going on in the nation.
There is a palpable, there's an excitement in the air. The aura is around me. The aura is around you tonight, because we know we get some of the best football we will see all season coming up tomorrow. 2 games on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and of course, 1 on Monday night in Arizona now as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. In fact, let's lead off the show talking about that first game that we're going to see tomorrow between the Chargers and the Texans. Now, Jeremy Fowler, who covers the NFL for ESPN, has reported that Quentin Johnston, with a thigh injury as well as an illness, is going to be good to go for the wild card game against the Texans. And people say, Balky, why are we talking about Quentin Johnston here? We know what this player is. We know what he's done, and more importantly, what he hasn't done over the course of 2 seasons. Well, I bring this up for a couple reasons. One, he was downgraded to did not practice on Wednesday, but apparently now he is good to go. And what did he do in week 18 without Josh Palmer, who, by the way, is not playing in the wildcard game against Houston? 13 catches, 186 yards. Now, that was against the Raiders. This is the Texans. I bring this up, Ferrell, because if you are looking to play a Charger in the world-famous playoff challenge with the FFPC, the Chargers are favorites to win this game. So you're getting 2 games. If our friends in the deserts are right, you're getting 2 games from a Charger. The way I see it, J.K. Dobbins and Ladd McConkey are going to be 2 of the most owned Chargers. What about Quentin Johnston if you want to pivot? Coming off a 13-catch game for 186 yards, is that an aberration? Would we look at doing this? You get 4 flexes in this challenge. Would we look at using Quentin Johnston as the 3rd Charger that might be owned this year?
I don't think so. It was a sleepy game last Sunday, the Raiders and the Chargers, and the Chargers started slow. And collectively, the quarterback looked good as the game went on, and he made a wonderful run. But inept on defense every way for the Raiders squad. This Houston defense is elite. You've got 2 defensive linemen here with double-digit sacks on the year. You've got a rookie defensive back, Bullock, I believe, with over 5 interceptions. Stingley is a ball hog, and he's a picking machine. The safety, I think his name is Bell. He's played better in the second half of the season. The defense will not tolerate some of the things that the receiver core, led by Johnson, was able to accomplish against the Raiders. I really like the idea that Houston Texans players should be one selection of your lineup, because I think they win in advance in this game.
It's every time I think that there's chaos in this world, and we're never going to get back to the way things were. I just look at how the NFL seemingly schedules the Houston Texans to play 4:30 every Saturday on Wild Card Weekend, and I just take a deep breath and I say, you know what? All is right with the world. The Texans and the Chargers.
This may not look like the Chiefs 30, Texans 0 as well.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That I want to pivot to the 4:30 game on Sunday because I think this is a little bit more interesting for fantasy purposes for the playoff challenge. Devonta Smith, according to Zach Berman, did not practice on Friday, but he is expected to play in the wild card round against Green Bay. Now, the Eagles are going to be having their quarterback starting this game after spending the better part of a month in concussion protocol. They are going to have their starting 2 receivers playing in this game that have missed time this week out of precaution. A.J. Brown dealing with a knee injury. My concern here is the Eagles are projected to make a semi-deep playoff run as the 2 seed in the NFC. And Saquon Barkley, I'm estimating, and I know Pat Kerrane from Legendary Upside and Ryan Kramer from the Sports Gambling Podcast have put out projected ownerships for a lot of these players in the challenge. You can check that out at x.com/FFPC. I made sure that we reposted those. I'm guessing 75%, 80% for Barkley in this competition. For those people who want to pivot off of Barkley and look for a different Eagle, Ferrell, can they feel good about A.J. Brown? Can they feel good about Devonta Smith? Not only because of the injuries these guys are dealing with this week, because their quarterback hasn't thrown a meaningful pass to him in about 3 weeks.
I think you can always feel good about A.J. Brown. You expect this team to advance. So if you're going to pivot on Barkley, that means you should pivot with multiple teams. This is what you've got to do. You've got to buy more teams. Because if you drafted in the first round, you likely passed on Barkley, unless you were in the 12th pick. And, do you want to live through another, now a postseason, the championship season? Do you want to live through it again, passing on Barkley? Do you just really want that through this contest? There's many Eagle players that will that you can make a fantasy argument for here. But when you balance the fact that we get down to the Super Bowl and you want to have a starting quarterback in the game, wouldn't you like to have one of the AFC quarterbacks? And who would that leave you with? Barkley. Couldn't you be happy with that? Can you find a receiver off of Detroit that you would be happy with, or another running back? So I really like the idea of Barkley here.
The other thing I want to bring up, and trust me, we'll have more playoff challenge stuff coming up later on in the show, but I do want to bring this up for a team who did not make the playoffs, and a team that I think is going to be interesting for fantasy purposes for those who are drafting early, be it live at Caesars Southern Indiana for the Super Sunday drafts for the KFFSC, or with the FFPC when they launch drafts coming up here in the next few weeks. The Cleveland Browns did not make the playoffs.
Breaking news.
They probably are not making the playoffs this coming year, but interesting fantasy players on these teams. Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku for one. Who are they catching passes from this coming year? I don't know, because Deshaun Watson ruptured his Achilles again and will probably not be ready for the start of the season, according to Ian Rappaport. A second tear for the Achilles for Deshaun Watson after suffering the initial tear about 3 months ago. Watson maybe never plays for the Browns again. I don't know. I would imagine that Cleveland, this is not a great year for quarterbacks in the draft. I would imagine they'd be looking at a veteran here. When you think about drafting a guy like Jerome Ford, David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, these players, how do we handle it going forward? Because we may not know who the Cleveland quarterback is until March, April, maybe even later than that.
It's a definite will be definitely a buyer's market for those players. And I think we're dealing with a lot of Cleveland Browns as double-digit players, and I think the player that you might want to stay away from, because he's always appears to be overdrafted to me, is Njoku. And he had some terrific moments this past year, but if you assume it's going to be a rookie quarterback, you might put him in the mix. But as we begin to draft early, I think those guys are pretty fascinating buys, because it can't get any worse. We saw good to better to sometimes excellent play from the variety of those players. They've just got to get it together with a quarterback that will have some form of consistency. And, people will like Winston, and if Winston remains there, Winston gives you the solid backup behind a young player.
That's what I'm hoping for, man. I don't know if Kevin Stefanski has the stomach for it to bring him back as the starter, but, man, I'd love to see Winston throwing balls to Njoku and Moore and Jeudy. Oh, God, Jeudy. I mean, he unlocked Jeudy, for God's sake. I'd love to see that next season as well. We have Pete Tarsiewicz, the 2024 FFPC main event champion and $1 million grand prize winner, coming up in just a couple of minutes. The last thing I want to get to before we talk to Pete is Michael Pittman. A player near and dear to Ferrell's heart, for sure. Chris Ballard, who is the GM of the Colts, said that Pittman is not going to need surgery on his fractured back Lot to unpack there. Lot to unpack. Now, apparently he was playing most of this season with this back injury, and this was his worst year since his first year in the NFL. 69 catches, 808 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Again, with a broken back.
Yeah.
This was a bad season for a lot of Colts receivers this year, due in part to Anthony Richardson and some poor quarterback play there. So apparently he's going to rest, he's going to rehab, and he's going to come back healthy for 2025. Anthony Richardson, we also found out today there's going to be some competition with him for the starting quarterback position. Ferrell, I feel like I'm asking the wrong person here because I think you might be a little bit biased. Pittman is going to be a nice little value in KFFSC and FFPC drafts in 2025, my friend.
I think 11th and 12th round might be where we get started with this player, and I think that's
spicy.
Just
yeah. I like that. Who do you think who starts more games for the Colts at quarterback next year? Anthony Richardson or someone else?
Wow. I think Richardson gets it. I think this year, this offseason will bring it together for him. And they will tolerate poor plays, interceptions, bad decisions because of what the potential is there for him to do. So I don't know how long they'll tolerate it, but he will. I think, what I love about him is downfield accuracy. When we talk about Pittman, we talk about downs. Let's think a little bit about Pierce. Pierce had one of his better receiving years, not so much in the numbers, but in the catches, but in the yardage. And the ball was often where it needed to be. We're talking about long passes. I don't know if you have quick access to the stats, Balky, but I think he had one of the higher per catch yards per catch of any receiver that I've seen. At least it looked that way to me.
His average per catch this year. I mean, do you want to take a guess at what it is before I tell you?
14.5.
You have woefully underbid, sir.
Oh,
Alec Pierce, yards per catch this year, 22.3.
Crazy.
22.3.
And so you would think the reason I went 14.5 is you would think they would throw him some little screens and some movement like that because he's a bigger guy. But yeah, they threw the ball to him down the field.
He had catches of 40, 49, 39, 39, 32, 65, 44, 60. An incredible year. 37 catches for 824 yards.
And Richardson throwing the ball to him for most of those. And that's what was so fascinating about it is his downfield accuracy. So if you have that as part of your game, the rest of it can be taught, learned, accented on, coached, changed. I think Richardson is going to be a worthy fantasy player moving forward.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. With a guy with his unique talents, especially on the ground, and he does throw a pretty good deep ball. You'd like to see him figure it out because it'd make everything better for fantasy football for sure. I don't think things could have gotten much better for our next guest for fantasy football in 2024. We had this guy on roughly 2 months ago, I want to say, and maybe it wasn't quite that. Maybe
that's what got him going. That's what got him going.
Yeah, exactly. Now, at the time, I believe he was in the top 10 of the FFPC main event, maybe even finished. Well, I know for sure he finished in the top 10 of the FFPC main event in the regular season. However, and we're going to get into this, that was not the team that won him a grand prize to remember. The $1 million winner in the FFPC main event for 2024 rejoins the show. You follow him on the X at Pete Tars. Please welcome back onto the show fantasy football millionaire Pete Tarsiewicz. Pete's welcome in.
There he is.
Congratulations, my friend.
Oh no, he's on mute.
Are you on mute, Pete? You might be on mute. Hold on, check. I hope it's not us. Are you good to go now? No, No, we still can't hear you. Okay. I'm gonna
facial
go ahead.
expressions alone. He's a better guest than we sometimes have. So you can do it with expressions, Pete. Just go ahead and just do it with expressions.
We're gonna mime this. The audio people are gonna love it. Okay. Here's what I'm gonna do, Pete. I am gonna pop you out right now. What I want you to do is close out and come back in, and hopefully that resets everything so we can get Pete on and talk to him about his big main event victory. We have a couple of emails tonight from people who have questions for Pete as well. We'll get to those for sure, because Ferrell, I'm sure I'll never be in the position of being a fantasy football millionaire. I'd love to pick the brain of a guy who is sitting on a big pile of cash right now. Bring him back in right now. Pete, do we have you? No, we cannot. We cannot. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why we cannot hear you. I can read lips, but I cannot hear you. But I'm going to keep you on, and hopefully it works out. We are getting congrats in from the YouTube chat room from Tom Smith. Kudos. That's one hell of a lineup you had. Pete, yes. You're on. We got you. We got you. Excellent. Not only is he a millionaire, he is not only a millionaire, ladies and gentlemen, he just defeated technology. Maybe even a bigger feat. Maybe even a bigger feat. Well, listen, congratulations, my friend. Awesome stuff. Have you come down from it? This is just got to be quite the high that you've been on the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. It's more relief, I say, than anything. It's just a relief, because like
that you won or that it's over.
Yeah, I mean it was 5 days of football.
Yes,
like that week 17. And so like, I mean, I wasn't sweating every single day, but it's just like, oh, there's players going tonight for 5 days. Yeah, so it was a lot.
So when, and I know, like for me, I was sweating out some championships, but not a 7-figure win. And I know how exhausted I was at the end of the Monday night game. Even before the Monday night game, I'm like, God, just get this week over with. I am so sick of, like, hand wringing. I can't imagine what it was like for you. Can you take us inside your mind and take us inside your life? What were you doing for week 17? How were you consuming the games? And then at what point, or what did you do at the point you realized you had just become an FFPC millionaire?
I didn't really think I had a strong shot until the Cincy game. Since he was playing Denver, I had Burrow, T, and Chase. It's like, okay, well, these guys have to do it, or I just don't really have a shot. I wasn't really paying attention to that game, to be honest, like, because the last time I was on here, I told you guys I'm a professional sports bettor. So I was just doing that, but I did have it on the TV. And then once the game started getting towards the end, I'm like, okay. And then Burrow does like this, the rushing touchdown when I think he was supposed to kneel it. Because like Chase Brown, he was like going in for the rushing touchdown and he like got hurt. Because like he was gonna kill the clock. And then Joe just ran it in himself anyway. So I was like, are you guys not on the same page? Like, what are you going to do there?
Yeah, I know. It's wild. But it worked out for you. But that's, I mean, you had to think as soon as you saw that the Brown kneels down and then Burrow scores the next play, you had to be like, okay, something magical is happening here.
I am overwhelmingly perplexed on several things. First of all, your scores the last 3 weeks: 192, 201. 216. So the old adage, don't ever let them see you sweat. You certainly didn't have a whole lot of reason to be sweating. So congratulations on that. Now the picture, I remember that you said that you not only make your living sports betting, that you concentrate on the NBA. So what perplexes me is the fact that you, with the grand sport of football and your Cincinnati stack, which we'll get into in a minute, but your grand sport of football that you could be viewing with $1 million on stake, you were watching some NBA basketball game. Tell me it ain't so, Pete. Tell me it ain't so. Tell me right now.
Tell me it's
not so. Just say it's not so. Well, I believe, I'm connected well in the medical community here in Kentucky. We can get you some therapy for that, Pete, because we need you to focus on football. It's going to lead to a longer life, a happier life. But yeah, that's what. Balky, take the next question away because I got to get my head around this and get back to the really cool question I want to ask.
Okay, so I guess here's the thing that I want to pin down. You told us that you thought you had a good shot after the Cincy game. At what point did you realize? Or I should say, at what point did you think like, okay, this is probably going to happen here? What did you not have any kind of reaction on purpose until the final game was over? And you
Balky wants to know that aha moment.
Yeah, I wanted to. What was the aha moment for you?
Yeah.
I mean, it was after the Tampa Bay Carolina. I mean, Thielen and Evans just almost put up 30. And at that point, I felt I was kind of just like running away with it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, if I can just get like 10 or 15 from Ford, I don't really see. But like, what's the fun in that? Like, let's have a sweat. Let's just have him get injured in the first quarter.
Balky, what would you do if you were ever in this position as we wait?
I don't know. I mean, like,
I think we should hire a band if we're ever in this position, and then we'll have a celebration, or we'll have some soft, soulful jazz to take us into an easy letdown. I don't know. We spoke with Tommy Herron, who was in the Fantasy Pros, and Tommy finished third, and he had to sweat it out a little bit, and if certain plays had gone the other way. It doesn't sound like you had that problem. I'm so happy for you. I want to ask you about your team. Okay. We're getting ready to have our little Super Bowl Sunday smash down here, and it's a lot of fun. We have a big payback league. We had a player down here that won them both, so he had a mighty good weekend last year. And I remember early on that he put together a team with Chase, with Higgins, and with Joe Burrow. And those common players are amongst your team. You drafted from the 12 spot in this. I wanted to ask you when you drafted this team, and is it something that you set out, this idea of stacking? We debated it all through the pros versus Joes to the point where people just got tired of hearing us talk about stacking. I love the strategy. Was it something that fell to you, or did you purposely target these players?
I mean, it obviously fell to me. There's no reason Chase should have gone in the end of the first round.
Good point. Well, when did you draft the team? When did you draft the team?
September 6th.
Okay. Now, that's an interesting time when you say there was no reason that you should have.
I mean, there is a reason. But
it was a conscious world of overthinking. Because when Balky and I were at Planet Hollywood and people are walking around, let's see, I don't think a lot of people did what you did because there was talk about Chase that he just wasn't going to play. Do you remember this, Balky? Do you remember these conversations?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Higgins was mysteriously hurt. If was this right? Was there some injury talk about Higgins?
Yes, from where I got him.
And then Burrow had some interesting things going on with his hair. And, if you're a fan of the show, Balky and I believe in letting hair be natural. So, so all these things conspired, I think. So you drafted Chase. Then what happened?
I don't know what T. Higgins ADP was. I mean, there wasn't – it all just kind of fell to me, I think, in this draft.
Well, here it is on the board. Look at that. That's good falling.
This is I just looked it up right now, Pete. Now I'm going to look up the ADP in a second of where we were at on when you made that.
That would be great because I can't remember.
So that's the classic overthinking that I think you were able to tune out because you were sitting back here, back east. You were not at Planet Hollywood, correct?
Correct.
You were able to avoid some of the
This is how it went for Pete for drafting these Bengals. Chase's ADP was 109. Pete got him at 112. Mm-hmm. Higgins ADP 512. Got him at 601. And then Burrow's ADP 9-12, but you took him at 801. So here's the secret: overdraft everybody. And that's how you win. That's how you win $1 million. Because I mean, like, you talk about it falling to you, and it really did. Obviously, I mean, for Higgins and Chase, but it wasn't like that wild of a slip for any of these guys. The one pick when it came to you at that 7-8 turn, you probably thought there was not a great chance that you were going to get Burrow at the 9-12. So you take him at the 801 along with Jerome Ford. And then after you take Burrow, 3 quarterbacks get taken before you had a chance to draft again. And that was Richardson, Murray, and Stroud. Right. So Burrow probably would have gone. And, this is how these things work out sometimes, Pete.
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty high on Burrow, to be honest. So I can definitely see me taking him there. But, like, I don't know. Sacking isn't, like, the most important thing to me. It's like a thing, but it's not like the number one. No. Like I see this draft board and like everything after Burrow, unimpressive. I have Thielen. Like just the first 8 picks was it.
Well, but I mean, Cade Otton was good in that little pocket when Evans was hurt. I mean, he had to help you out.
He was good. He was good, kid.
But yeah, I mean, like, so the draft, and I know this is horrible especially for those of you listening audio, but this is how the draft went. Again, this is from the 12 spot for Pete. Jamar Chase, Jahmyr Gibbs, Devonta Smith, Mike Evans. So 3 receivers and a running back. Then you get your tight end and Mark Andrews, Higgins, Ford, Burrow. And then this is when, again, your words, Pete, not mine, the unimpressive part starts of the draft. Corum, Gus Edwards, Dobbs, Curtis Samuel, Thielen, which was a great pick, Otton, Jalen McMillan. You probably didn't keep him on your roster all season, did you?
I did not.
Okay, and then Jamal Williams, Jahan Dotson, Mike Gesicki, Fairbairn, and then the Falcons. So,
see, Balky, I told you Curtis Samuel could win a championship.
Yeah, Curtis Samuel.
You got him on your team. You said to get him on your club.
He didn't stay there. He didn't stay there.
Well, but because he played on your team, he still gets a ring. That's the way that the pro team.
Is that how we do it? Okay.
That's how the FFPC does it as well. So Curtis Samuel, thank you for your services, but you will still get a ring. You won't be in the championship photo. Okay. The thing I want to talk about, and this was wild to me when I looked this up. 10th place overall going into the championship round. So you get the 10th place regular season finish. That team was not the $1 million winning team. It finished in 260th place. The team that won the main event was sitting all the way down at 724th going into the championship round. Did you look at your teams at all heading into that 3-week sprint? Do you remember having any thoughts like, oh, if things fall right with the Bengals here, maybe this team makes some noise?
No. In my mind, no. I mean, I had 4 rosters going in. In my mind, I really thought only 2 like actually had a shot.
Mm-hmm.
This roster was not one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I just really wasn't thinking about it at all until we just showed up week 17.
Pete, you're never going to be accused of overthinking, and I love it. That must be the key to. That must be a fantastic key to your success.
There's no need to.
Yeah, it's as Balky summarizes it, think long and think wrong. I thought wrong all year. I was wrong in October. I doubled down on wrong in November. And by December, it really didn't matter for me. And I thought, I drafted teams that I didn't deserve because they had good players on them. I just always played the wrong one. So I'm going to ask you, when you got to week 17, was there a tough decision? Was there one tough decision that you had to make? Or were you considering Jamar Chase or Curtis Samuel and just went with Chase?
It was
in your gut, it was Chase,
Yeah, I love Chase. It was always it was either Thielen or Devonta Smith.
Thielen or
Devonta Smith.
Oh yeah, okay, I can see that. And that decision got harder as the season continued.
Yeah,
because I actually played Thielen week 16. That was the week Devonta got 30. I was like, ouch. that hurts. 20 points difference, but whatever. Still fine with the decision. And then, week 17, they both scored about the same. So, like, I couldn't do any wrong there. So,
good result.
Yeah.
I know I'm asking you a question you may not recall, or maybe you've blotted it out of your mind. But looking at this team, even just to get into the championship round, you were the 4 seed in the league playoffs. Semifinals, you play against a former guest of this show in Mike Sheffer. You beat him, and then you take on the Cocktails and Dreams juggernaut from Chad Schroeder in the championship. You beat him, and as a result, you get into the championship round. Did you go back and look at any of the lineup decisions, either in the league playoffs or in the actual championship round sprint, that you were this close to going the other way that would have cost you the $1 million?
So I prefer not to torture myself, so I don't do that. But what I did do, actually, just out of the top 3, because we were all so close, I wanted to see what lineup decisions that they had. And I do feel bad for Dreaming of Sundays, because he had one. It was Judy versus JSN, and he picked JSN.
Wow.
And if he just goes Judy, it's not even close.
Wow.
So that's what I did instead. I looked at other people's lineups and did that.
that's the most that's the best advice we got, Balky. Let's just look at everybody else.
There's a little bit of Schadenfreude there, but I get it. It makes sense. It makes sense. One thing I was going to ask you earlier, Pete, when the final, not the buzzer sounded, but when the final seconds ticked off the clock in that Lions-Niners game, what was the first thing you did when you realized, okay, I have just won $1 million from the FFPC? First thing you did? Did you make a phone call? Did you just go to sleep? Did you go for a walk? We had Mike Melberg on last week, who won the FantasyPros Championship $1 million. He had to go on a walk like during the game because he was so nervous. Yeah. What was the first thing that you did right after week 17 went final?
I mean, I had a bunch of people sweating it with me. So I just let them all know that, hey, we did it. And then went downstairs, told my wife. And she's like, well, you have to have a drink. And I'm like, because I'm like sick. Like I've been sick for like a week or so at this point. And I'm like, I don't really want to drink. She's like, I'll make you a drink. And so she made me a drink, sat on the couch. It's very like decompressing. And then that was it. It was like very like relieved and like you can breathe now. That was it.
What was the drink of choice?
Yeah, so what was the drink?
What I need to drink next season for good luck.
She made me a nice tequila drink.
Tequila, okay. Yeah. All right. Got it. All right. I know.
That's known as a great alcohol to settle your stomachs.
I have heard that no alcohol is good for you, but if you are going to drink alcohol, tequila is the best one for you. So there's that.
People are lying to you. I mean, that's why you and I get
listen, the Kentucky guy's going to tell me that bourbon cures cancer. I understand.
Make your beard grow better.
It will for sure. Pete, so you're decompressing on the couch. You enjoy your tequila, just a relief. How long did it take you for you to calm down enough for you to go to sleep that night? Or was it a quicker process?
I mean, it was like I said, I could breathe, and so like I could sleep. I feel like I just
took an Alka-Seltzer Cold Plus, Balky, and called it a night. It was great. Had a little fizzy experience. I'll give you a football question. Balky's going to ask you what you did with the money. I've got some ideas, but I'm going to ask you a football question. And earlier this summer, because I was drafting a lot in spring, and I said, you know what? God, I could be just getting a little bit too much of this player. And then Balky comes out and has a picture of Gronkowski and Brock Bowers standing side by side. You remember this, Balky?
Yeah, I do.
And Brock Bowers looked like a sixth grader standing next to him. And I said, well, maybe I've just got a little too much Brock Bowers. And then, you can't have such a thing. I got a little too much of a Lad McConkey. Just couldn't, what I'm asking you, who's the player that you wish you had more of, and that you you might be targeting for this coming year. And I will add, you don't want to necessarily bust up that team of Burrow and Chase. Maybe Chase, if you were drafting here in Kentucky, Chase would probably go 1-1. You know, how are you going to approach the draft next year? And who's a player that you just really wish you'd had more of and going to get more of next year?
I mean, it's actually insane that you mentioned Ladd and Brock, because I just had none of them.
None of them.
Completely out.
You saw that picture, too, that Balky was spreading around.
I just didn't think he could get the ball with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. But then Devontae Adams just wasn't on the team anymore. But I think he was doing fine, even with Devontae. It was just a miss. That was a miss. I had a lot of misses. Lab was one. Trey McBride, I had Dalton Kincaid over Trey, solidly. Yeah. That was a big miss. I didn't like this doesn't really answer your question. I didn't like Mark Andrews, but he ended up on my team. Well, that was the I guess Baltimore played that Thursday. They were the first.
Yes.
Yep.
They were the first game.
And that was likely had the big game that game.
Right. And so I got Mark in the 5th, and I was like,
yeah,
okay, everything has a price. So I was like, okay, Mark.
You should have been there immediately after the game at Planet Hollywood, where poor souls took Likely in the second round. That was
interesting. Interesting you bring this up because Isaiah Likely in that draft that Pete was in, his $1 million winning draft, Mark Andrews goes at the 512 to Pete. Likely goes at 410 to none other than the team that Pete beat in his league championship game, Chad Schroeder. How about that?
Yeah.
Time is a flat circle.
It is. I'm sure he was his first head-to-head.
He took Lamar Jackson at the 610 as well to load up on that. I did a quick and dirty look at this at your waiver wire selections and pickups throughout the season. Nobody particularly stood out to me, but maybe I missed somebody in there. Was there anybody that you picked up off the waiver wire for this squad, Pete, that had a profound impact on you winning the $1 million?
Like during the regular season, no. But I was always like really high on Atlanta for the championship round, which I felt like I might be a little crazy thinking this. There's nothing in like the box score that will show that Atlanta is going to do anything against like the Giants and the Raiders, but it's the Giants and the Raiders. And I know I'm playing them twice against these two teams. And so I was looking at I had Atlanta for every single playoff team that I had. I was just all in Atlanta.
I love it.
Ironically, you drafted Atlanta.
I did
in the 20th round of this draft.
Yes.
You promptly cut them 5 days later to the Dolphins defense. Yes, you did. 5 days after you drafted them, you dropped them for the Dolphins defense, and then December 4th, welcome back into the fold. Atlanta Falcons defense, cutting Jalen McMillan for the Falcons defense, and it all worked out again. Shout out Russ Cole. Time is a flat circle as the Falcons find their way back to win a ring for the Infinite Wiggles squad of Pete Tarsiewicz. That is the $1 million champion. I want to ask you a couple of emails here. I think we could squeeze them in. George in Woburn, Massachusetts wants to know, how did you manage your stress during week 17? Congratulations on the cash. That is George in Woburn, Mass. I know being a pro sports bettor, maybe it never got overwhelming or close to overwhelming for you. How stressed were you? I mean, you said you were relieved when it was over. Was there ever a point where you just needed to take a breath, take a beat, step away, and just do something else?
I mean, I managed stress pretty well. So I'll say that. The final game, so Monday, I was like, I'm not going to sweat this whole game. That's just that's just too much. And my kids, they stay up pretty late. I have two daughters, and so I actually was just watching like Paw Patrol for like the first half of the game.
I like Paw Patrol.
Yeah,
The
so like
smaller
that was my sweat. I was watching Paw Patrol, like, okay, kids go to bed. All right, like let's see what's going on here. But I had extra sweat. Are you guys familiar with like Circa, Survivor, Million?
Mm-hmm.
I was in that until the last week. So I had like extra sweat, extra
Yeah,
stress.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I had Atlanta week 18, unfortunately.
Yeah, that stinks.
Yeah,
But I mean,
okay.
that's a deep run there too. And
Thanks for
obviously,
bringing up Atlanta, Balky.
yeah, I know. It's just this is what I do. I bring.
It's okay. Atlanta helped me. Like, they're allowed to lose. That's okay.
Yeah,
it's all right.
Yeah, they helped you with the million for sure.
Yeah.
So that is nice. That is George's email. We'll do one more here. Bobby in Portland, Oregon. I hesitated to bring this one up, but I think it's kind of an interesting question to think about. So I'll bring it up. Of all the guys, this is Bobby's email to you. Of all the guys on your $1 million team, who do you think is going to be the biggest letdown in 2025? So I think this is compelling too, because last year's price is not this year's price. And there are players that you had drafted at certain spots that maybe will go higher in 2025 because of their big performances this year. And they may not pay off at that draft spot. What is your thought, or what are your thoughts, Pete, on the player that you have on this roster this year that you think is going to let a lot of people down in 2025?
I mean, the easiest one is Mark Andrews. I didn't like him last year, but he was on there because of his price. I don't know what his price is going to be next year. So it kind of depends on that, like where they finish and like what you can expect out of them. I don't know. It's like, for some reason, I just don't like Mike Evans. I mean, this guy just like, it's tough to want to be down on Mike because he just has a 1,000-yard streak going. So like any year he plays,
he has 8 more good years in front of him. That's what I'm predicting. It's just going to go on forever.
8 more good years and then 5 above average years, and then we could start thinking about when is he going to fall off the proverbial cliff?
50-year-old wide receiver, Mike.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's good stuff.
The thing is, and I said this, and Pete, you don't play Dynasty, do you?
No, I just have like a home. I have like one home league. It's a Dynasty.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. I have Mike Evans in one of my Dynasty leagues, and for like the last 3 years, I thought about trading him and flipping him for like picks or younger players, and I can't bring myself to do it. I feel like he might be one of these guys that's made the deal with the devil and is just always going to be good. So I'll be left holding the bag when he does fall off the cliff, and I'm good with that.
They're just always going to try to get him the 1,000 yards.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that's just the thing. It's like, how do you say no to that? I don't know.
Yeah, you don't. That's the thing. You don't say no. You say yes to Mike Evans.
Keep playing Mike. Just play him.
Ferrell, final question for Pete tonight, and probably my favorite, the most fun one we always ask of our big prize winners.
This is normally your question.
Do you want me to ask it? I can ask it.
You go ahead and ask it, because I have a follow-up after you ask it. I know some things that he's going to do. So you go ahead and ask it.
So obviously, when you all of a sudden have this $1 million burning a hole in your pocket, Pete, you want to go out and spend vacations, cars, whatever, things that I'm not even thinking of. I always think about, did you ever see the remake of The Italian Job with Mark Wahlberg?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, at the end of that movie, spoiler alert, Jason Statham gets his Aston Martin. Mos Def gets a room full of first edition books and to keep all his shoes in there. Like, this is the kind of stuff we're looking for with the answer to this question. And I know you're probably just going to say, yeah, I'll spend a little bit on my family and invest the rest or something like that. If that's the truth, give us the truth. But if you feel like making up a fun answer here too, I'd be fine with that. What are you going to do with this $1 million?
Okay, so I've wanted this barrel sauna for like a really long time.
Oh,
and
here we go.
For some reason, like, I just haven't pulled the trigger on it. But now I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
we have to
time
get
to
this.
pull.
I have the space in the backyard. There's like currently a hot tub there, but remove the hot tub, put the barrel sauna in. Like that's what I want. Barrel sauna.
That wasn't what I was expecting. First of all, I want you to get that hole in the roof fixed behind your right head.
My skylight?
I will get to get that fixed. And that distracts me every show. And then I know that you're going to take the balance and bet it on the Pistons. I just somehow know that that's what are the Pistons still in the NBA, Balky?
Yeah, and they're
you're going to bet it on the Pistons or something.
Making a comeback this year too.
It's going to be great.
Why the Pistons?
Well, I don't know. This one of the I have my last NBA player that I can recall was
Isaiah Thomas.
Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer. So those are my guys.
Yeah. When Michael Jordan took over the league, Pete, that's when Ferrell stopped paying attention to it.
Yeah, he's a great player. But yeah, we got to get this. We got to get that. You know, if you were in Kentucky tonight, you'd have to climb up on the roof, scrape that damn thing off. You know, you just need to fill that in. And other than that, it's good stuff. And I've got a guy in the sauna business that you should talk to.
I like the skylight, and Ferrell can hook you up with a barrel sauna guy for sure. Ferrell has got a guy for everybody. But yeah, get that barrel sauna, and that'll look cool. Taking the hot tub out, putting the barrel sauna in. Are the plans already in motion for that, or is this something that you're doing down the road?
No, down the road. Like
okay.
I do like all of that stuff like in the summer usually because like right now I'm betting and I just I feel like I just don't have the time to.
Will you watch NBA basketball after we close out the podcast tonight?
No, I'm off tonight.
Good for you. I'm glad we caught you on an off night. And you know what? You deserve an off night after.
He never has an off night. Though.
He didn't have any off nights. He ran pretty pure in the FFPC main event. No off nights then. Pete Tarsiewicz, follow him on the X at Pete Tars. You can see it on your screen right there. The latest FFPC millionaire, the 2024 FFPC main event champion. Pete, thank you so much, not only for coming on once, but for coming on twice, regaling us with your story of what happened in week 17 and letting us know some of the insight that went into constructing this team, maintaining this team, and leading it to a 7-figure grand prize. Enjoy the postseason, my friend. Enjoy the NBA. We'll talk again real soon. Thank you so much for hopping aboard with us tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
My hero, Pete.
Exactly. Pete Tarsiewicz, ladies and gentlemen, joining us tonight, the 2024 FFPC main event champion. Woo! Good stuff there. So here's what we found out from the $1 million winners this year, Ferrell. One of them went on a frozen walk in Northeast Wisconsin to deal with the stress, and the other just flips on a little Paw Patrol, takes a deep breath, and it was all good. This is how they manage.
Paw Patrol is not authentic though, because that smaller puppy couldn't drive that fire engine. But that's a whole nother.
Marshall, I used to know all their names because my kids were big into it. Chase was the police dog. Marshall was the fire guy. Rubble was the guy in the bulldozer. I can't remember the other.
It's a good job though, there, Balky. Pete didn't go into depth about what he's going to do with the money because I can tell you what's going to happen. He's going to give most of it away. He's got people. He's got loved ones, and he's going to share it and cherish his personal generosity. And he doesn't want to brag about that on air, but that's what he's going to do.
He could. I would like to see him give some of that to a couple of airlines to fly out to Las Vegas and Louisville. He would enjoy both. He's almost obligated to show up at Planet Hollywood because, people want to meet him and people want to get to know him. And then, Jimmy Williams has already invited him to come to Kentucky. And, with the money that he won in the FFPC, plus what he might have won for his fine finish in Circa, he'd probably buy the governor's mansion down here and move in over in Frankfurt. But we would love to see him here, but he must make a September trip to Planet Hollywood. And I say that as a lifelong bachelor, and he told me he's got 2 young girls watching Paw Patrol, so it's easy for me to tell him to go. Right. Yeah. Let's fire away on some of the other emails that we got here tonight for the FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge, which is going to have rosters lock in about 17 hours, I would say, somewhere around there. What I'm trying to bring up here is last year's ownership in the playoff challenge to kind of give you a reference when we answer these questions. The data I'm using is from fantasymojo.com. Darren Armani, who not only runs that, but the godfather of the FFPC Pros versus Joes Challenge, he puts all this data together. So when I bring this up here, I'm going to reference the ownership of last year's contest to give us somewhat of a baseline. First email. Don in Schaumburg, Illinois. Need your help, guys. Is Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jahmyr Gibbs the right lion to play in the FFPC Playoff Challenge? We also had, I think Michael Kinzel had a similar question in the YouTube chat earlier tonight. Now, last year, Ferrell, which I know is a different year, Jahmyr Gibbs owned in 16% of FFPC rosters. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 78%. David Montgomery's back. We saw what Gibbs did down the stretch. Is that going to cloud us in what the right lion is to own this year? I can't imagine the disparity between St. Brown and Gibbs is going to be, 78 to 16% this year. In fact, I would think Gibbs is going to be more owned than St. Brown. St. Brown is kind of the pivot for Detroit this year. Is that how you're seeing it?
Gibbs is a running back that I want to have to put with Barkley, and then I'm going to have an AFC quarterback, and I'm going to try to get to the championship with a starting running back in the NFC and a starting quarterback in the AFC. So that would be my play.
So you're building it around Jackson, Barkley, Gibbs, and then Allen, Barkley, Gibbs. That's your core of your backfield.
Yeah, there's a guy named Mahomes that might get there too.
Oh, and Mahomes. Yep. You're right. Speaking of Mahomes, let's go to Kansas City. What are your thoughts on playing Xavier Worthy instead of Travis Kelce for the FFPC Challenge? Thank you. That is Paul in Massapequa, New York. Thank you, Paul, for your email. This is something that I've been thinking about the last week and a half or so. I've talked about it with a lot of people. And the more I think about it, the more I'm starting to like putting Worthy in as the leverage play over Kelce. Worthy's who and Ferrell, I'm going to bring this up right now. I brought this up with I think Cullen Hoffman on Tuesday night when we were talking about the champion for the $100,000 winner from last year, who we've had on this show before. The end of the season for Xavier Worthy looked like this in week. Okay. He has seen 31 targets the last 3 weeks of the season that he played. He didn't play week 18 because the starters sat out. Right. 31 targets, Ferrell. He caught 21 of those balls for roughly 195-ish yards and 2 touchdowns. That's in the last 3 weeks. His best 3 games of the season were his last 3 weeks.
That's what you want to see in a rookie. Now, who were those opponents?
Cleveland, at Cleveland.
Right.
Home against Houston, and then at Pittsburgh.
Yeah. When Houston, I've raved about their secondary and their pass rush. I believe my initial thought is to say a rookie wide receiver can be thwarted by some of the talented corners that are playing for these playoff teams and some of the defensive-minded coaches who can scheme to get a young player out of his game. Where when you think about Travis Kelce, do you see the Chiefs advancing without big, consistent games for Kelce? Then you get the fabulous FFPC 1.5. I don't want to bet against Kelce over another Chief unless it's Mahomes. And I temper a lot of this by saying that this contest I have not been tremendously successful with. But that would be my thinking on those 2 players.
The other thing I want to bring up here, this is a final player question. We kind of just talked about this with Pete, but we talked about it more in like a season-long sense. Rich in Newark, Pennsylvania, Mike Evans or Bucky Irving for $500K, gentlemen. I view Bucky Irving as the chalk play for Tampa. I also know, and part of that is because, and I was talking with Howard Bender from Fantasy Alarm about this earlier. Washington has been pretty good on perimeter receivers in general this year. And now Lattimore should be back for this game against Mike Evans, a battle that he normally comes out on top.
Yes, he does.
Most of the time. And if Tampa's one and done, which they very well could be, I got to look at the spread on that, but they very well could be. Do you really want to ride Mike Evans going up against Lattimore as your pick? I think if I want to pivot off of Bucky Irving, I want to go the Jalen McMillan route. I want to go the Cade Otton route, something that is going to be less owned than Mike Evans, but I feel like has a better chance of hitting. That's how I look at it. How do you look at it?
I agree with you. And if you begin to think about who's looked good in the last quarter of the season, who's getting it together, who plays with the ability to put up huge numbers of points. What do you think about Baker Mayfield? What do you think about Goff, who has home field advantage through the playoffs? These are, before you know it, you can end up with multiple teams, which is the beauty of this contest. You can buy as many teams as you want. And but when you go through these rosters, there's just some wonderful players in the NFL that have helped these teams get in this position. So I think that you get into a situation where you have to pick what we always go back to is the guy looks at you and say, I like my draft. I got my guys. This is the perfect time to have your guys. As I said earlier in the show, Saquon Barkley is my guy, so I'm going to, there you go.
Rubio,
Bill Hollywood is probably spot on with that.
With Ladd McConkey.
Yeah.
Rubio wants to know your take on Jonnu Smith this season.
Is he still in the league?
He is, and he was one of the best tight ends. I'm
wonderful.
going to look that up right now. It was wonderful if you had him. If you missed out on him, it was not wonderful.
Yeah, and someone mentioned Ertz as well. That was a terrific gift at tight end. Gesicki on certain weeks could, especially down the stretch, was a valuable player. My take on that player is that he'll go much higher next year because his opportunity and talent finally meshed, and he was fun to watch too. And I think he's become, later in his career, it appears to me he's become more physical and more athletic, which means he's probably working harder to stay in the league. So if you look at the production of all tight ends and a guy like Smith included this year, and you say, I'm going to have tight end by committee, and then you can drive yourself crazy on which one to start every week.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So if you believe in Jonnu, get him and put him out there.
Jonnu Smith finished as tight end 6 in FFPC scoring this year.
Where did Ertz finish?
Zach Ertz.
Yes.
Well, should we for Ertz, shouldn't we do you want to go points per game or you want to just go total points? I did total
points per game, I guess.
Okay. So if we do points per game, Zach Ertz, whoops, I screwed that up. Sorry. Zach Ertz would have finished as tight end 12, which
it's a big spread between 6 and 12. Yeah.
But so I think if we go, if we do, Zach Ertz, by the way, if we don't do points per game, finished as tight end 7, tight end 8, tight end 8. Okay. Jonnu Smith is under contract with the Dolphins next year in his age 30 season. I can't believe I'm saying this. Is Jonnu Smith going to be overdrafted next year? Is Jonnu Smith a bust in 2025?
No, but with that team's got a lot of changes to make. So let's see. Look, where's Bowers going to go? Is he going to go in the first round?
John Terry and I were talking about this the other day, and Dave Gerzak is the one who put this in my head. But and I think he was kind of joking about it. He's like, next year's 101 in FFPC, Balky, Brock Bowers. And I kind of like laughed and I'm like, well, and then, but now the people I brought it up with, they are more focused on Jamar Chase and Saquon Barkley in the top two. And I think CeeDee Lamb may have been, I can't remember. But Bowers first half of the first round. I mean, he's like, you think about what Kelsey was doing in the prime of his career. It didn't, I mean, what Bowers did as a rookie is just, we don't have a reference point for somebody doing something like that. Tight end or receiver. It's insane.
Then you say a rookie quarterback comes to the Raiders and, a rookie. And then first of all, Bowers is not playing tight end. He's playing slot receiver.
Right. Yeah.
Thank God we got him as a tight end. And that's another way to think about it because I just went to the game and, they had 2 and 3 tight ends on the field, a variety of the time. And he's a slot receiver.
My concern with Bowers next year is I know they're going to get improved quarterback play. I don't want it, and I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but I said I want them to get an average or above average quarterback. I do not want them getting a good or a great quarterback. Great quarterbacks, good quarterbacks, Ferrell, they don't lock on to receivers. Like they'll throw to the open guy. They go through their progressions. I need somebody who is, and I bring up the Jake Delhomme, Steve Smith thing. Jake Delhomme was just good enough to always get the ball to Steve Smith, right? Didn't get the ball to anybody else, but he got it to Steve Smith. Steve Smith put up some unbelievable seasons. I want somebody like that in Las Vegas next year. Good enough to get it to Bowers all the time, but not good enough to work through the progressions and throw it to other people. Jacoby Myers, okay, I can live with that. But I want Bowers having that type of quarterback next year. Will that happen? I don't know, but it's on my wish list for sure.
I agree.
Final question. And this is something that we got a similar email about this last week, but I definitely I can't remember how I answered this, so I'm going to maybe change my answer. But I want to get yours, Ferrell. Brent in Kansas City, can I get your semi-early Super Bowl prediction? Go Chiefs. Thank you for the email, Brent in Kansas City. I can tell you, spoiler alert, I am no longer picking the Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl. No. Ferrell, who do you have in the Super Bowl right now? This is important for those playoff challenge owners.
I'm gonna be chalky in the. I'm going Ravens and the Detroits.
Ferrell, I thought I was going to be different here, but that is exactly who I have in the Super Bowl. I think it is Baltimore's year. I think that Buffalo does not have enough talent on that team to beat Baltimore, even though that game will be at Orchard Park. And I think the clock is very close to midnight on the Kansas City Chiefs, who skated by on a lot of one-score victories this year. I think Baltimore and Lamar Jackson, this is their time. And I just think Detroit is the best team.
And then we're all going to be so excited when it's Chargers versus the Rams.
Or Chargers Buccaneers. I'd be good with that too. Chargers Rams, the all LA Super Bowl with everything.
Yeah, LA needs something after what's been happening.
At Michael Kinsell, by the way, posted in the chat, he also has Baltimore and Detroit in the Super Bowl.
You gotta love those Detroits with the home field advantage all the way through the playoffs.
Yeah, and listen, I've admitted this already. I thought it was a mistake when Dan Campbell was loading up his coaching staff with all these former players, and he didn't have a whole lot of guys with a lot of coaching experience. I was wrong. These guys have worked out. You don't need to look any further than what they've been able to do on defense with all those injuries they've had this year. They've not only weathered the storm, they have excelled, and that is a sign of a really good coach team. Now, as far as decision making goes with Dan Campbell, my concern for Lions fans out there is he makes one of these really bold calls late in the game and it costs them the game. That would stink for the Lions season to end on that. But I am concerned about that. If he can avoid that, hey, this is the Lions Super Bowl to lose for sure.
I can imagine him going for it on every fourth down, and then when he runs the punter out there to actually punt, it's a fake punt.
Yes,
which is fascinating. You're glued to the TV on every down.
Hopefully you were glued to your screen tonight because we brought you a lot of stuff here with the FFPC Playoff Challenge. And obviously Pete Tarsiewicz talking about his main event championship. I want to thank Pete, Ferrell, the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and of course each and every one of you Ferrell, until we talk again next week, KFFSC.com is where to register for those Sunday drafts coming up on Super Bowl Sunday, which is about a month or so away from that. The earliest drafts that you can get, including drafting live at Caesars Southern Indiana, live in Kentucky. That is going to be a lot of fun for sure. I wish you nothing but the best in the playoff challenge for you. I know you said before you haven't had the best luck in this contest over the years. Maybe this is similar to Lamar Jackson. Maybe this is your year. We'll see what happens there. And we will do this again next week, my friend. Thank you so much for hanging out.
Pleasure, Balk.
That is Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. Check him out, KFFSC.com, and register for those drafts right now. We will be back next Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. In case you missed the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown on Tuesday night, you can go back and watch that on the FFPC socials and FFPC YouTube. 2023-2024 $100,000 FFPC Playoff Challenge champion and runner-up, Cullen Hoffman. Yeah, that's right. He took first and second in that competition last year. The Lowdown will be back this Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern for our Season 9 finale. That is the last of the weekly shows this season. We'll go monthly after that first Tuesday of the month. We'll churn out a new episode of that. In case you missed last night's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network, we had legendary upside Steph Miller, and she brought a lot to the table. We analyzed just about every single angle you could think of for the FFPC Playoff Challenge. We each built a lineup on the show. If you want to see what we did there, again, the FFPC socials or the Better Sports Network, you can watch it there as well. We will be back this coming Thursday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time for 2 full hours with Draft Sharks Jared Smola. That is going to be a fun one. Been trying to get Jared back on the show for a while. So glad that we have him coming aboard this Thursday night. A reminder to join the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge. 2 contests, same format, no draft, no salary cap. Just choose the 12 players you want and enjoy watching them ride throughout the playoffs without having to monkey around and make changes to your roster throughout. 1 player per NFL team. Enter for $35, take a shot at $100,000. Enter for $200, take a shot at $500,000. myffpc.com, myffpc.com is where to go for that. I just checked right now. We're looking at about 75% full at the $200 level, and we're looking at about 85% full for the $35 level. These teams are going to go fast. There's going to be a little bit of a lull tonight. They're going to go fast and furious in the morning as well as the early afternoon tomorrow. Lineups lock at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and get notified every time we go live, which will be Tuesday night, Thursday night, and Friday night next week. For Ferrell Elliott and Oinker, your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Final piece of advice I'll leave you with tonight regarding playoff challenge building lineups. There will be a lot of chalk, a significant amount of chalk on whoever wins the 500K. There will be some pivot plays on that. I would just focus on, you got to get the chalk right, but focus on those 4 players, those 3 players, whatever it is, 5 players that are going to be a little bit different. You can go deep. Just don't live in the deep end when you're formulating these rosters. Cullen Hoffman said this on Tuesday night. You don't have to be perfect to win the 6-figure grand prize. Bear that in mind when you're trying to do this. And I know, you want to, enter multiple entries and try to cover all your bases. Just remember, you don't have to be perfect. Good luck in building those lineups. And when you win that 500K, we'd love to have you on the show to tell us all about it and how you did. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Good luck in the playoff challenge and enjoy the NFL playoffs. We'll see you next week.